who do smoke, we keep saying that, okay, I am quitting, but yeah, it's just one cigarette a day, then I'll do it. The next week I'll do it. But it's not that strong of a priority for us currently, is why.
So, like I said, I was a smoker and I started smoking when I was 18, 19 years old. That's a habit that I continued into my 20s. And I knew that I was addicted because I knew that smoking was causing this bronchitis. And I think in my 30s is when I started realizing I could feel the ill effects of smoking. And I realized that if I didn't change the direction of where I was going, then I was going to pay like a heavy consequence for these actions.
Explorer, outdoor adventures and studies professor. Our guest today on the Settle or Be Better podcast is Ganesh, who's going to be talking to us about quitting smoking for real this time and his amazing work in outdoor studies. So, welcome, Mr. Ganesh, and over to you. Why don't you begin by telling us a little bit about your personal health and wellness story and your current work?
All right. Hey, thank you. Thank you so much for having me here on Settle or Better podcast. Pretty excited to talk about my journey. As always, I love sharing what I do, especially because it's pretty critical in this time where there are a lot of diseases related to lifestyle. And I think lifestyle modification is such an important thing and a way to prevent long-term disease and to ensure long-term well-being. So, as you said, I was a long-time smoker. Now I haven't smoked for the last 10, going on to my 11th year. So it's been, and I've been committed to this good lifestyle, and it's given me a lot of benefits. So, like I said, I was a smoker, and I started smoking when I was in my teens, late teens actually, when I was 18, 19 years old. And that's a habit that I continued into my 20s. And I think in my 30s is when I started realizing I could feel the ill effects of smoking. And I realized that if I didn't change the direction of where I was going, then I was going to pay like a heavy consequence for these actions. I was already catching up. I mean, I was running out of breath. I had a tooth fall. I had bronchitis, and this cough would never go away. And I knew that I was addicted because I knew that smoking was causing this bronchitis. And in spite of that, I continued to smoke. So that was like a big wake up call for me because it was making me sick, but at the same time I couldn't live without it. So it was like being in a very toxic relationship, and I often compare my smoking habit. Now that I put some distance, I compare it to a relationship because cigarettes were there everywhere I went. It was there when I woke up in the morning. It was there with a cup of tea. It was there after lunch. It was there when I came home at the evening. It was there on vacations. It was there when I was having a good day, when I was having a bad day, when I was just celebrating. And I suddenly realized that there was no escaping it. It doesn't matter where I went, it followed. And so to cut away from something like that was definitely not an easy task. I spent quite a lot of attempts and I failed miserably quite a few times. But yeah, finally, I think I persevered and it finally worked out for me. And a large part of this was lifestyle modification. I decided that I needed to get a little fit because it was an uphill battle getting out of addiction because you're changing your mentality and stuff like that. You need to change the way you look at it. And you need to be strong for it because there were so many moments that I could have easily just quit and gone back. Being committed to it is super important. I wouldn't say it is completely up to willpower, and I think a large part of it had to do with education, and I think I took the time to educate myself about my addiction. And so the number one thing that I did was to accept that I was addicted to cigarettes. And without that, I don't think anything else would have happened. So yeah. So my current work, what I do is I mostly work with students. And I work as to set up something called a Center for Outdoor Studies at MIT. And MIT is where I'm a professor. I teach electronics inside the classroom, but outside the classroom, I run the Center for Outdoor Studies, which builds leadership and environmental stewardship through adventure expeditions. So we mostly do bicycle touring and a bit of sea kayaking and a little bit of trekking. And over the last year, through the center, we put together a team to cycle the Himalayas, kayak the coast of Karnataka. So it's been really good. One of the things that we work on is also psychological development. So we will particularly work towards resilience and building resilience. So psychological resilience is the capacity for anybody to face challenging moments in their lives, and it gives them that edge and to build that never give up kind of spirit. So I think it's important all the time. It's seldom taught in the university. Seldom taught inside a classroom, which is impossible to do. You have to take students out, and it has to be built in a very dynamic environment. And adventures, usually have the dynamic environment is why people go out in adventures. It's so that they can test themselves and see how prepared they are. Yeah, so that's what we make possible through the Center for Outdoor Studies.
Right. That's amazing to know. It's a very interesting story, and we're gonna learn a lot more from you in this episode today. And thank you for sharing that with us. And to begin with, what you said earlier about smoking is that I'm sure that this is what a lot of people struggle with, is to just accept the fact that you're addicted to it. Because whenever you'd ask a friend, they'd just say, "Oh yeah, no, I just smoke, just 2 cigarettes a day. I'm not addicted to it. I just smoke 3 a day." Or when I'm stressed, there's nothing like I'm addicted to it, right? So just
Yeah.
accepting the fact that you are addicted to it is a big step to begin with, getting rid of it. So what would be your tips or your advice to people who have been in the cycle of quitting and getting back to it, but they want to quit for real this time? What were your whys, and what are your tips on actually doing it for this time?
I think you have to be super serious about it. You have to be committed and you have to prioritize quitting over everything else. That's what I did. Everything came second. That meant cutting out friends, like not going out, stop partying. It meant avoiding any social interactions which would trigger smoking. Like when I first started, I took a 10-day leave from my work, so that I could just sit at home, just see myself through that initial 1 week wherein it's the toughest, wherein a lot of withdrawals. So if you really look into, if you actually go and read a lot about smoking and smoking addiction, you know that it's the first 3 or 4 days that's the toughest, wherein you have physical withdrawal. After that, it's mostly mental. And mental triggers and cues that make you want to, which keep you in the loop. That takes a lot longer because there's so many unknown cues. Like your boss can trigger you, like a bad day in the office can trigger you. You seeing somebody else can trigger you to smoke a cigarette. So there's a lot of mental work that goes into it as well. And I think right now it is much more socially acceptable to admit that you have a smoking addiction. But back then, when I started, it was still a taboo to talk about these things. This was in early 2010, 2011. So I think you have a lot more openness to go and talk to a therapist and stuff like that, and who will help you through it. But I think it's important for yourself to decide that this has to be a priority. If you do not prioritize it, it's not going to happen. And I think many people find it hard to prioritize that. So I think my number one advice to people who are quitting is to make that your number one priority, and to keep it as a number one priority for at least 2 to 3 months, because then by the time you'll have a handle on it. So cutting out a number of social interactions, like I didn't hang out with many of my friends because my friends were some of them were smokers, and we started smoking together. But it doesn't mean that this is something that you have to do for life. Many of my really close friends are still smokers, and I still hang out with them. But it no longer bothers me when I'm in a room full of smokers and people are smoking. It doesn't affect me in any way. And having said that, you should also realize that I do get triggers to smoke. It's been 11 years now, but there are still times in a year, probably half a dozen times, that I get like a strong urge to smoke. But it's something that you learn how to handle. It becomes much more easy. And it's been phenomenal how my life has changed since I quit smoking. Within the first year itself, I had gone from finding it so difficult to just climb a flight of stairs to cycling around 100 kilometers, and your body bounces back. So the earlier you quit, the faster your body is going to recover, and
Right.
you can lead a very healthy and very satisfying life. So my other advice to people are: quit today. Don't wait for tomorrow. Quit today. Quit now. And your body is miraculous. It bounces back and let you do things that you never imagined. Like I was saying, when I was at my peak smoking, I couldn't even climb a flight of stairs. I'd be breathless. But within a year, I had planned my Himalayan trip. I had gone and cycled, and I'd cycled up to 5,200 meters, which is unimaginable. But that is largely my body, and the body was still elastic, and it was still able to come back and bounce back. So if you give it the opportunity, it is strong, it will come back, and it will do phenomenal things.
Right, and when it comes to smoking, we can't really wean off it, right? Like we can't say, okay, I'm gonna cut down to 3 a day and then 2 a day, and we always bounce back when we have that plan in our mind. So that's true. Like if we have to quit, it's gotta be today, and it's gotta be a strong decision. Because it was amazing to see that you took 10 days of work to just make this your priority. Because a lot of us who do smoke, we keep saying that, okay, I am quitting, but yeah, it's just one cigarette a day, then I'll do it, the next week I'll do it, but it's not that strong of a priority for us currently, is why we aren't able to do it. And like you said that you also failed at times when you were quitting, and you also felt the urge, a very strong urge. And now it's been 10, 11 years, so of course you have come around it. But how was it like in the first initial years, when you felt the strong urge to get back to it, to have that one cigarette at least, and then go back to not having it? What was it that you did to fight that urge, and how can it help people today?
So what I did was immediately replace cigarettes with cycling. So every time I got an urge to cycle, I would just jump on my cycle and just cycle around the block. Like literally, that's what I did. And it was lucky for me because I worked in a place wherein it was quiet, in a very quiet neighborhood. So there was no traffic around, so I could just jump on my bicycle and just go around and cycle. And I'd worked at this firm for quite some time, so I had that flexibility to just leave work for like not for a long time, for like 15 minutes and just go around, and that really helped. Also, I some of the things that I did was I wrote down a list of reasons why I wanted to quit. So often when I got the urge, one of the first things was that I would look at the list. You won't believe it. One of the first things, the number one, was to have like a painless laugh. Like it was so bad my smoking that whenever I laughed, I would feel pain in my body,
Hmm.
and I wanted to experience laughter without having pain. So making down a list of reasons why you want to quit is also like a very powerful tool, and having it with you at all times so that you can look and read it and understand why you're doing this. So yeah, does it answer your question?
Absolutely, it does. That makes so much sense, and I hope that a lot of the smokers listening to this who have decided for real that they want to quit this time, I'm sure that this can help. Especially the bit where you said that you actually replace smoking with cycling, and that can be done with anything else, right? Like, I mean, it can be going on a run or doing
Yeah.
anything little to just. That's how our brain works. I mean, that's how we'd have to program
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, so like a slight diversion to just get your mind off. And smoking naturally, I think cycling, sorry, not smoking, cycling just is something about it, just moving and moving your body suddenly gets the blood flowing. You get like a hit of endorphins, and you feel good about yourself. Yeah, and I think cycling, that's what cycling did for me. It did help me bounce back and come back real strong, not just physically but mentally as well. When you're in addiction, it just definitely takes a hit. Some level or the other, it hits you, your confidence goes down, and you need to see how you can pull yourself back up, and you need a victory. And so, small victories is what you have to aim for, so that it gives you that confidence. So, I was in the very beginning, I was taking it one day at a time, 1 hour at a time, saying that okay, next hour I'm not going to smoke. And you have to look at it in a micro level, and then suddenly you're 1 week down, and that's such a good boost of confidence. And then you look at the next week, and then you look at a month, then you look 6 months, and probably in the beginning when you really start, you have to like think about, okay, what is it in the next hour that might trigger me from smoking, and how am I going to handle it? So having a strategy in place is super important. I think taking 10 days off to do this was super important because it helped me understand my own rhythm, when is it I
Right.
was smoking, and helped me at least at a very basic level, at my body level, understand what is it that triggers me. A certain time of the day that triggers you to smoke, like meals, after meals, and stuff like that. Yeah. Anyways, it's a long time that's happened, so I can't really tell you exactly what happened.
Right.
But this has been the process. I think writing down your triggers and coming up with a strategy is very, very important. To think ahead
Right.
is very important. And coming up, it's not that when you're in the fire that you start to suddenly realize, okay, now how do I tackle this fire? Having a plan in place is very important, so that when you're there, you know what you need to do. You don't have to think at that
Absolutely.
point in time. At that point in time, you're just acting.
Right, that makes so much sense. Thank you for these amazing insights. And correct me if I'm wrong, but you started on cycling and outdoor adventures after you quit smoking, right? After you decided to do that, or
Um,
was it from like way before that?
no, I think it was way before that. But it was not adventure. But I grew up in Manipal, and Manipal is a really small town, and it was a village back then, and all you could do was just be outside all the time because there's nothing to do at home. And Manipal was such a beautiful place because it had a river, it had a lake, it had these laterite plateaus. So naturally, as a kid, I would go out and explore these places, climb trees, walk down these hills and stuff like that. So the outdoors was something that I naturally connected with. Also, scouts was a big part of my life when I was growing up. So I went on a number of camps with these scouting groups and stuff like that. Also, my parents took me traveling. So I saw a lot because of my parents. So travel was definitely a big part of my life when I was growing up. Reading Tintin was something that I read as a kid, and Tintin also influenced me a lot. So there was a lot of these influences that was there, that was playing, that was in the background. And cycling somehow tied everything together. It helped me go out and explore the landscape in a new way and live stories, like when I started cycling in the very beginning, I'd just do like a 2 day tour. But during those 2 day tours, I met some fantastic. My bicycle broke down. I had these crazy adventures, losing my way, and then yeah. And every time I came back, I had a nice story to tell, and that kept me going. And it's nice, yeah, yeah. It was. Oh man, yeah, I can't think of anything else. Yeah.
That's amazing, and we can really see the love you have for the work you do right now, and it's amazing to see it does replicate. It does, show from your work, and So tell us about your first trip or the many trips that you've done till now, the many travels or the cycling tours that you've done. Is there something that stood out for you that you learned about your own health along the way on those trips? And was there something you picked on or a new habit that you met people on these trips, or you travel to these different places? What was something particularly about health and well-being that you picked on from these trips and it's now a habit for you?
I would say this is like something related to my health, but generally, what I realized, keep things very simple, not overcomplicated. Keep things very simple so that it becomes very easy to manage. Like one of the things that I did when I was touring, the first time I went on my big trip, I spent around 8 months on the road. I cycled from Srinagar to Kathmandu, and I cycled all the way back from Kathmandu back to Manipal. So I spent 8 months cycling around India. This was in 2014. And it was such a fantastic experience because I learned so much about myself. And one particular incident that sticks out, and when I talk about keeping things simple, is when I was first started preparing for this, I saw so many scenarios in my head, and I was trying to prepare for each of those scenarios. I'd be like, okay, I need this kind of jacket, I need this kind of tent, I need this equipment for this. I need an elephant knife, and I had so much on my bicycle that as time went on, I suddenly realized I'm covering less and less distance because my bicycle is so heavy. And though I knew this at some levels, when I met this man, this Babaji who was on in Nepal, I crossed over this bridge, and I wanted to go and cycle around the Annapurnas. And I realized at that point I'd already been on the road for like some three and a half months, and I'd cycled some really high mountains. And I suddenly reached rural Nepal, and it became so difficult because my cycle was so heavy, and I still wanted to go and cycle in the Annapurnas. And I was at that point ready to try anything. And I met this guy, this Babaji, who was sitting by this river, Banganga, and I went down to him and I started talking. And the reason I started talking to him was because he had a bicycle as well. And I was like, okay, this is a bicycle Baba, so let me just go talk to him. And once I started talking with the Baba, and I asked the Baba, he had nothing. And I asked the Baba, how are you traveling so light? And he said, what you don't have, the road provides. And that stuck a very deep chord inside of me. I suddenly realized, yeah, I don't really probably need everything. And anyway, I reached Pokhara. I cycled for a few more days with my heavy load. I reached Pokhara, and at Pokhara, I sold most of my stuff. Some stuff I packed and sent back home. And I took really less with me out into the mountains, and I went to the Annapurnas. And if you see my pack was just that much. And I spent like a couple of weeks up in Annapurnas, and I was in. And if you see in Annapurnas, it's all 8,000 meter peaks, and there's a track that goes around. And I did it, and I suddenly realized that it's the key is to keep things very simple. It's often in life that it's your baggage, both mental and physical, that holds you back. So if you keep things very lean, very clean, then you can go really far ahead. And yeah, so what you don't have, the road provides.
Absolutely, that's a beautiful thought, and I mean, it's true, right? And this applies to a lot of people who have this resolution this year or have been having this resolution over the years. And the first thing when you think about, okay, I want to get fitter this time, is they start buying things. Like, I want to get my workout clothes. I'm not coming to the gym today because I don't have my workout clothes. I need to get the
Yeah,
shoes, I need to get a
yeah,
bag, I need to
yeah,
get a membership. Like,
yeah,
so many of these things start piling up, and then you're like, oh my god, I have to do so much. Maybe
yeah,
just next month, why not next
yeah,
month? So that's true, it does, it's very relatable, and a lot of us go through this cycle, right? So that makes so much sense, to just begin with whatever we have right now today, and not
exactly.
wait on piling on the things and then having that 100% of things with you and then doing it, right? So that
Yeah,
makes so much
that's
sense.
what. Then you just get into the cycle of just buying things and not doing
True.
it. And it's so important to do things and see later figure out what you really need. And I often tell my students the same thing as well. Whenever they come to a course, I tell them don't go out and buy stuff. Use what you have, and then you know what you really need, because you might be able to do it just with the chappals that you're wearing.
True.
When I went and did a backpacking course. In in I did a backpacking course several years ago, and I bought these really new shoes, and they were expensive shoes, and I bought those and I wore them, and I was miserable the whole time because it took time to break in. And there was this girl who was there on part of the course, and she was just wearing regular trainers, and she just crushed it. And I was like, oh my god, I'm wearing such expensive shoes and I'm dying because of all these blisters, and this girl is just doing it with this. I felt like such a fool, and I was like, shit, why did I invest in this?
True.
And since then, I was like, okay, cool. I'll use whatever I have, and if I really need to, then I'll buy. I'll improvise. I'll buy whatever I need. And now things are so easily available. You don't really need to. So the
Right.
what I come down to what you said is first to do things and then figure out.
Right, of course. When it comes to health, we definitely don't need more things, because we also see this in when we are gifting things, right? Like, I mean, we'd give this fit watch to our parents, or we'd gift some membership or something like that, and we're like, okay, now this is where new resolution just started, and we have never seen people actually use those things or use it for a very long time, and it actually making a contribution to their health. It just doesn't. What we need to do is just to go out there and begin with whatever we have. Thank you
Yeah.
for sharing. That was a great insight. And are doing these auto adventures and these studies with your students. What is the intention? Like, what was the intention of starting this for students, and what has it been doing it for them?
Well, like you said, I've been born and brought up in Nepal, and I've watched my teacher, my parents have been working as teachers in this institute as well for a long time. And like I said, I was naturally connected to the outdoors in Manipal, which is such a beautiful place. We are on the western coast of India. We have like a sea very close to us. We have a river. We have the Western Ghats at the back. So there are a lot of natural resources which are just around us. And I realized that, hey, this perfect place. And I didn't know this for a long time. I obviously traveled and I came back, and when I came back, I realized that, hey man, I think an outdoor school in Manipal is not such a bad idea. So we have a lot of students. Students are going out and exploring anyways, putting a small educational aspect to it, just in terms of risk management, in terms of leadership, in terms of a little environmental stewardship. It'll just give them a more wholesome and I think with that intention is what I started the Center for Outdoor Studies.
Right. And I'm sure that movement in itself and being in the outdoors has such a major impact on how one learns and grows, because a lot of us, when we've been students, we found this, we've been in this space where we've been stuck. We don't want to study. We don't want to, we feel like we're not learning much right now, or, it's not really helping us grow. And it's a great time to introduce movement in such a space when we feel really stuck mentally, or we've been doing the same thing. We've been trying to just like trying to learn one particular aspect, and we're doing it over and over again, and we can't really get through it. Just adding movement in that time and space can help us so much, right? So it's
Yeah.
amazing the work that you're doing, and I'm sure that it is having a great impact on the students and their academics right now.
A lot of students say that it's just helping them break out and get out of a rut, help them deal with some of the anxiety that they're facing with respect to exams, social anxiety, meeting new people, interacting with new people, being in a new environment. It's just basically helping them not just cope, but suddenly they're thriving because you're putting them in like a place wherein they're getting bitten by leeches. They have to stay outdoors. It's really tough. You got to really walk a lot. You got to cycle a lot. It's hot. You're going thirsty. You don't get the food that you need. And suddenly they come back and say, hey man, it's not so bad here. Yeah. But not only that, they also get to work with a diversity of not everybody comes with the same strengths. Say, and many people have different kinds of weaknesses, and you've got to work with strengths and weaknesses of people.
Right.
Inside of a classroom, your actions don't really matter. You can bunk a class and only you are going to pay the consequence. Whereas when you're outdoors, you miss one training session, you might be the weakest one, and suddenly you're affecting the whole, the performance of the whole group. And it's so
True.
important that you show up every day and you train and you put in that time. That way, not only are you growing in confidence, the team has confidence in you as well. So one of the things that we keep drilling into our students on all these outdoor groups is when you take care of yourself, you take care of the group. So building that and building that understanding that your actions not just affects those around you is so important. Because in a classroom, like I said, nobody else is paying the consequences of missing out, not paying attention. But outdoors, every single action affects the group performance.
That's really interesting, and I hope that you get so many more students who are interested in this, and they learn a lot more from this experience, because there should definitely be more schools and colleges, having this aspect of learning in their curriculum, and and like really engaging students in so much more than just the books that they are reading right now, right?
No, it's so critical right now because of climate change. And we're so far removed from a natural environment.
True.
It's like we are in like an AC room. The outdoors don't matter, but in fact, the outdoors matter so much to our well-being. Our water comes from there. Our air comes from there. Our food comes from the outdoors. It's not grown in a lab. And if we think that everything is going to be indoors, it's not. We need to go out and we need to engage with the natural environment because that's where life is.
Absolutely.
It's we're not living in an aquarium. We're not like a bubble. We need to go out and understand that it's very critical that we conserve our natural environment, and the easiest way to do that is to create a bond with it. And adventure and outdoor pursuits creates that bond because it gives you a lot of meaning, and suddenly you realize that, and gives you a lot of joy and satisfaction. And the minute you derive that kind of satisfaction with it, you wouldn't want to destroy it. You would want to conserve it, and you would want to share that with others. And that's been a critical part of my work as well, is to create that natural bond. It can be in any way. It could just be people get really creative. They draw, they write, they go for a swim, they just sit on its bank, on the back of a river. Many ways that students can connect. Hundreds of ways. Everybody has their own unique way to connect with it. And that's the beauty of nature. Or
Right.
the outdoors. It'll accept you for what you are, and you can do anything you want to do with it. Doesn't mean you
True.
have to go climb the highest mountain. It could just be you sitting on the side of a pond and just gazing into it, or just listening to a bird call and getting drawn into that experience. So many different ways that you can engage with it. It's just a fantastic. That's what we're made of as well. We are not separate. We're not above it. We are a part of it. And so when we destroy nature, we're destroying ourselves.
True. Definitely lost that connection, and I mean, it doesn't come back with just going on a trip like every 3 to 4 months or something like that. We need to do on a daily basis something that helps us engage and connect, have the connection back. So that makes so much sense. Thank you for sharing that with us, and that brings us to the end of the episode today. As we conclude, do you have any last messages to leave us with?
It's a great opportunity to find meaning more than anything else. I think finding purpose and finding meaning is very important.
Right.
to lead a fulfilling life. It's not like big careers, big cars, or whatever. If you're chasing that, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble later on. Uh, but I think as a young, at least I tell my students that it's very important to find purpose and meaning, and everything else will follow.
That's a beautiful message. Thank you for sharing that with us and me and the episode here today. Anyone who wants to reach out to you, there are links in the description below. They can reach out to you, learn a lot more from you, and watch your journey more closely. So, more power to you, to your upcoming cycling, tours and to whatever work you're doing with these students right now. So, thank you once again, Mr. Ganesh, for being here today, and it's been an amazing episode.
Thank you, Sakshi.